Magandang umaga po mga kapamilya, kapuso at kapatid. Para fair, di ba? Anyway, when I was invited to talk about nuances of language and the presentation style of President Duterte, I went back to a discussion I had with some of my PR colleagues in the International PR Association when we decided collectively to bring to the attention, hopefully, of the then elected President Duterte some public relations points that may be considered as we move on with the country under his leadership. The one that I submitted to the association was published by Business Mirror, and I echoed that in my Business Life column in the Philippine Star. But I don't know if it reached anybody in the communications team. Anyway, I'd like to go back to that particular idea, which I believe after 5 or 6 months of being the country's primary leader, the whole thing still resonates, and I'd like to echo that in this forum. And I will liberally use the word you, meaning the whole thing is really addressed directly to the President. Okay. You were voted into office. It's not working? Okay. Because of your authenticity, your high empathy quotient, okay, called high IQ, and perhaps your ability to check your own hubris. More than PR posturing or kowtowing to political correctness, your campaign covered the concepts of uprightness, boldness, and quality integration with the Filipino electorates. And as you continue to lead the country as its 16th president, let me give this unsolicited advice. First, your authenticity rules. Sustain it. The basic instinct in communicating is twofold: to inform and influence others, to think positively about your persona, and it's a really different type of persona that we are seeing, and of course the way you administer your office. These days, words are cheap, but you and your administration must ensure to walk the talk, and this is authenticity at its best. Authenticity is sound advice. If you make a promise, as we say in advertising, you must deliver. It is a mantra that your administration has to take to heart. And integrity is living the value that Filipinos expect over the long term. We still have 5.5 years under your administration. Make your communication team. I'm very happy that spokesperson Abella is with us today. To use communication strategically. I learned something today. Language is strategy. In PR, we call it messaging is strategy. And I was discussing with the group earlier why the messaging team of the Office of the Communication has been collapsed and has been seconded to all the other functions of the Communications Office. Messaging is going to be critical. It has to link up with your constituents, especially if we're talking about authenticity. It is a vital concern. Your government must be able to effectively connect with the general public or niche clusters. The interests and expectations of the various publics your administration needs to deal with are sometimes in conflict. Talk about the burial of President Marcos in the libingan ng mga bayani, requiring you to strike a balance between what to do first and how to connect your actions to them. More often than not, it is good to always have authenticity and honesty in tandem and to keep them intact when you walk your talk. Empathy is your currency of success. You have a high empathy quotient, and it will surely help in bringing and sustaining trust and insights into your constituents' emotions and reasons. Because we all know that empathy rules in the world of governance, where people have turned more discerning and skeptical. It is acknowledging the fact that Filipinos are looking not just to buy something, but to buy into something. You have a distinct personality, we all know that, and value is the hallmark of your persona. More than 16 million of us discovered something in you that mirror who we are, what we want to be, and the type of leader we want to be with. You are a political brand. What you do is who you are. A communications principle anchored on improvisational thinking. What is improvisational thinking? Improvisational thinking is the transfer of energy from the source, meaning you as a leader of the land, to the intended recipient, your constituencies of an idea, or a belief based on specific behavior or intended action. It is looking at communication in a new way, going beyond mere messages sent and messages received. It's more than upward and downward information, moving beyond offline or online dissemination. Otherwise labeled as influential communication, it is a deeper level of communication where the buy-in of constituents is sealed and mutually beneficial interests are shared. It's very much like Winston Churchill enveloping the British people with the energy of hope, or Barack Obama getting a buy-in of his audacity of hope as he brings his entire country into one solid connectedness. Or Mahatma Gandhi's and Nelson Mandela's behavior and self-effacing character, creeping into the consciousness of their respective constituents as they move them to action using empathetic and charismatic communication. In today's practice, your political brand must influence and lead, where your ideas, platforms, or visions are presented in a clear, concise, and focused manner, where resistance and opposition are dealt with carefully, and where situations and leads are entered into from a position of strength. We can list 4 keys to effective, persuasive Duterte communication. We should have empathy. We should have honesty, focus, and intention. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. To communicate effectively with others, you must have a strong sense of self-awareness. Be constantly in touch with your own voice and apparent in what you stand for or represent. A 5-step process is also being recommended for us to be able to bring communication into its influential and leading capacity. We have to determine the purpose of your communication process, requiring crystal clarity in its delivery. Your call to action must move people without hesitation. Your plan must be audience-centric, your victory scheme must be foolproof, and your mobilization course must summarize the role of people with distinction. So we have to, the urgency of your action, or the why you should act, a definition of the relief process, or what's your plan, an outline of your success path, what are your initiatives, and of course the appropriate support, meaning whose help do you need to bring your programs into implementation. The purpose of your communication, as I've said earlier, must be crystal clear, and this can be achieved through a model that I'd like to pursue. This is called the core communication model, which revolves around the core concept of changes, objectives, reasons, and effect. It defines the objective for the adjustment to be communicated, the reason for such adjustment, and the expected response or result at the end of the process. It kicks off with the process of listening, where you focus on your presentation or speaking skills, believing that if you listen to people, they will tell you everything you want to know, and you in turn can address their concerns. Listening combines honor, entering into an agreement that stands on the ground of communal respect, the echo factor, providing helpful feedback, the process of asking or generating the needed information without appearing too intrusive, and responding, meaning providing appropriate retorts that can motivate active participation. A good plan makes people listen, and listen well, and turn resistance into strengths. That is assuming that the strategy is properly executed. Dealing with resistance can be more effective if you or your communication team is able to identify and draw out the source of the struggle. Or to defy the temptation to respond emotionally, or to get defensive, to use the feedback given by the resistors to your advantage, and ultimately empty your battle cup. A good head and a good heart are always a formidable combination. Mandela brought that principle to heart, believing that a skillful listening ear coupled with a nice heart and mind to fight off resistance will surely make your communication leadership strong, responsive, and positively influential. There are 8 reminders that can also be offered for consideration. For sure, this can help communicate with positive influence your great power and strong leadership. First, you have to think wide and shallow, narrow and deep. Just like rubber bands, you need to be flexible. You stretch or contract depending on situations, issues, or personalities that confront you. You have to define now. Communication requires immediacy in all its aspects: program development, implementation, evaluation, and measurement. Lead from behind. Bring active engagement and generate firm commitments from people, rather than leading from the front where the flock simply waits for your instructions or to get pushed. Empty the cup of anger and resistance. This requires letting go of what people say that affects you in a negative way. You must learn to forgive the naysayers and people who pull you down, and then move on and start again. Let go of the desire to change others. Focus on being more aware of your own behavior towards them. instead of endeavoring to alter other people's deeds or misdeeds while you ignore yours. Blow on the sparks that are already there. Work on what has been left behind, and just like the phoenix, rise from the ashes to build anew using the communication supremacy you can master. Rely on your instruments, not just your instincts. Communication is both an art and a science. You should listen to your gut feelings, yes, but it is always advisable to be formulaic. Utilize tried and tested communication devices, learn from best practices, listen to the wisdom of those who have been there and done that. Ask, how do I want to be remembered? What will your individual communicator stamp be? Is it influential, maverick, a guru, a differentiator, a winner, or a builder? And as you talk or tell your stories to your audience, engage your listeners. It does not matter how you do it, so long as you do it. Every leader tells a leadership story in 3 parts. Who am I? Who are we? And what is our common purpose? The 21st century has seen great changes in the way you communicate and hence in the stories you tell. People understand character better than policies. That's why a trivial story well told is always better than a profound story badly told. Be cautious in your use of words. Take extra care in applying positive vocabulary about you, and at times negative language directed at your rivals and competitors. On television, pictures can be even more important. Telling a leadership narrative is like the board game Snakes and Ladders. Making a speech in a controlled environment is a ladder, something likely to enhance your reputation as a leader. But giving an interview, especially on a confrontational radio program or a newspaper journalist, is potentially a snake, since it is very intricate for you to have power over. Give your audience the star moment. Star is short for something they will always remember. Think of Bill Gates opening a jar filled with mosquitoes while talking about malaria to a room filled with potential donors. You shared experiences of your childhood to identify with a nation of people. It is a universal phenomenon. You have a fund of stories from your early days. You remember your family pets, how your mother, for example, roamed the streets of Davao alone, protesting against Marcos. You remember the discipline of your parents, the crazy things you did, the hard lessons of successes and failures, and the rebellion of your teenage years. You also know that such stories connect with your common humanity. The naughtiness and misfortunes of your youth cleverly remind you of the common humanity you shared with the people and other future leaders. Aspire for authenticity in your story, even if authenticity can be faked. And sometimes it should be faked. Authenticity is more important than truth. Stories that the audience suspects may not entirely be true can serve the leader's purpose as long as they sound genuine. But honesty is still the best policy, because if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything, and a story that sounds real is one that will be believed even if, as with the biographies of many leaders, some of the details have been massaged, spun, or fabricated. Live your story. Don't just tell it. Nothing annoys people more than discovering that the stories that you tell do not match up to your actions. In theater, this is called dramatic irony. In real life, it is called hypocrisy. Author Salman Rushdie declared, Those who do not have power over the story that dominates their lives, the power to retell it, rethink it, and deconstruct it, joke about it, and change it as times change, truly are powerless because they cannot think new thoughts. You are a storyteller. I think that's very evident in some of your impromptu speeches. You exist amid a web of stories. You develop a stronger connection by doing that. Behind a great leader is a great story. You establish a stronger and more meaningful connection between the Filipino people by your power to tell stories. Lastly, constantly check hubris or the loss of contact with reality and an overestimation of your own capability and accomplishments. Take inspiration from the tortoise and the hare, the Aesop's fable that gave us the moral lesson that at the end of all bouts of unchecked hubris is failure or lies failure. So when you are supervising yourself and managing the country, you need to get rid of all hubris that crops up every so often. As novelist Ralph Ellison said, the antidote to hubris, to overweening pride, is irony, that capacity to discover and systematize ideas. Or as Emerson insisted, the development of consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. This formula I have just shared with you is a back-to-basics reminder on how to communicate persuasively. It may appear NIDAC or nothing you don't already know, but these are the same essential communication fundamentals that you almost always tend to brush off. To persuade people, your communication must have the power to influence and lead. Have a great 6 years or 5.5 years leading this great country of great people. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you to our two speakers. We don't have much time, but we will have about 10 minutes for the open forum. So I'd reserve my questions. If there's anybody who wants to ask a question, please identify yourself and the institution or organization you represent. Anyone? Yes, please.
Good morning, Secretary Abella and guests. I would like to thank you for being here. My name is Marichu Lambino. I'm a lawyer. I teach media law. And we'd like to thank you for being here. And congratulations. When President Duterte arrived, his language and communication style was more, how do I call it, more refined. I guess that's your work. That's your, he was more, no cuss words, no losing of temper, very diplomatic, so congratulations for that. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of the topic because I'm really concerned about what's going on in the social media, but that's for 1 o'clock. But let me just relay this message because I understand saber rattling, so that's what the president is doing, saber rattling, trying to warn drug dealers. I understand the use of strong language to do that, but in the social media, operators of Malacanang have extended the violent language against young women who are critical of the president's policies, especially because of the burial of Marcos at the Libingan ng mga Bayani. We have seen recently how young women were being bullied, cyber-bullied, threatened with gang rape. And the use of words I cannot repeat here. I cannot repeat those words. I've never heard those words spoken in our house, really dirty, foul profanities against young women, young men, young journalists being threatened, those who have exposed corruption and excesses in the killings. have also been threatened, have been extended death threats. So I think while I understand that the president has to use violent language to threaten criminals, we are just worried that this kind of violent language has extended even to non-criminals, has extended to students who are critical of government, young women, ordinary professionals, and we are just worried, and we hope that, at some point you could give us the names of these operators in the social media, because they deserve to be criminally charged, because the fomenting of violent language in the social media is a criminal offense that should be guarded against. Yun lang po.
Thank you. Would you want to comment or react to that, Mr. Secretary?
Hello, yeah. What specifically was the question?
Well, basically, I think she was making a comment on,
Right.
on social medias.
Just a reaction. Well, first and foremost,
I'll repeat the question. If you are aware of the names of those operators,
Am I
in the
aware of the
social
names?
media-
No.
I guess not. but
No,
I
I'm
guess
not aware of
but
the names,
If you
yes.
could relay to whoever is in charge to this is getting out of control,
right.
sir. This is getting out of control.
I'm sure you're not implying that it's coming from government media.
I think it's probably a dirty tricks department or a black propaganda department, because it is so massive and so rampant, the trolls and the so-called DDS in the social media, which I know you have nothing to do with.
No, but
I'm just
let
relaying
me.
this. Baka it's possible that you know who is in charge of the social media
Yes.
department.
Let me just give my opinion on that. No, I think what we call them the corporate trolls. No, they will jump on anything that will be negative towards the Duterte administration. Talk of Agot Isidro being cursed, being flooded with negative reactions when she made a stand or she made a statement which was rather unacceptable to a lot of people who supported the president. But I don't know if that is still sanctioned by the office of the communications secretary or the spokesperson, because some of those who comment are really just jumping into the statement and making their own opinion about what has been said or what has not been said. So I don't know if there's going to be a policy or a strategy that should come out of the communications office defining guidelines, I mean, in relation to their followers on how to react on certain items that are coming out on social media.
As I would say during the press briefings, we'll take note of that. I mean, simply because I cannot fully answer I understand the situation, and it's morphing. It morphs just depending on the day and the issue. But definitely, guidelines would be in place, and I will refer this matter to the social media department and find out. It's a complex thing, but no, it's not something that's hoped for. I mean, the situation that is not ideal, but I personally have stopped tweeting. I started to tweet, but I realized that it's an impossible situation. You know, whether for good or bad, people will comment. So I decided to leave social media alone for a while. Even my own Facebook account, I have stopped publishing, stopped posting. But I will definitely refer the matter to the right people. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.